Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. The numbers 50 and 75 resonate this week for a very specific reason, and we'll tell you why. The number 75 is a magical number for Inside Great Lakes Sailing because this is the 75th episode that we have produced in just over 2.5 years. We've enjoyed every minute of it and certainly learned a ton about sailing and being able to meet some of the folks that we've met to realize just the quality and caliber of sailors and sailing in the Great Lakes. We hope you'll stay tuned and enjoy this show and ones to come. I think in the next few weeks, we're going to get very excited about the MAC races, all the small boat racing that goes on some of our larger lakes. And we're going to cover a number of those things, including the Star Championships in Lake St. Clair. And Makatawa Bay will handle the 420 Nationals, and I think in a couple of weeks. This week, the number 50 also means something as a kickoff to the Bayview from Port Huron to Mackinac race. We're going to talk to Tom Meier, who is going to become a Grand Ram. If you're not aware of what that is, it's 50 years of competing in that race, the Bayview Port Huron to Mac race. And in 50 years, there's only been a handful, about 33 now, out of we figured out somewhere around the 20,000 sailors who've been involved in the race over the last 97 years. It's a very special honor. Tom talks about the race, having moved to Harbor Springs. He's still a member at Bayview, and as well as the Little Traverse Yacht Club. And he kind of gives us some insight to what it's like to be a part of the race committee and just the whole race in general. And I think it's a great kickoff story for the upcoming Bayview Port Huron to Mackinac race. So Tom will be up in a second. And we also get a chance to slip down to the Sandusky Sailing Club. And the area, U.S. Sailing Areas E's for 420s and lasers had their competition. We got a chance to talk to some young sailors down there who will be headed to Makatawa Bay. And I think that'll be an interesting insight. We always cover the big guys. In the next couple of weeks, we'll certainly be covering the Chicago to Mac race. Next week, we will have a show before the Mac race covering the stars. We get a chance to talk to Mark Struby, who is one of the nationally ranked star sailors in the country. We're going to talk to a couple of local guys about their boats. And then on Tuesday, we're going to check in with Paul Kayard, who says the Star Championship in 1988 was his best sail ever. And it'll be fun to talk to the director of U.S. Olympic Sailing from U.S. Sailing Headquarters on the East Coast. So we're looking forward to that. We hope you can stay tuned for the show. Being number 75, we think this will hopefully be a good one. I think you'll enjoy the interview with Tom, and stay tuned. We'll be back in a second. We're talking with Tom Meier, and Tom is up in Harbor Springs getting ready for next week's Mackinac race. Tom, we're going to talk a little bit about names that I find interesting. Old goats, old forts, and Grand Rams, which are interesting numbers because the Society of Mackinac Island Old Goats, which I didn't even know existed, of which you are a board member.
Yeah.
You got to explain to me that you're going to do 50 Max this year, which is, spectacular. But you guys in the sport, in 98, you decided obviously to come up with this Grand Ram deal. So First of all, explain all those names and exactly what the Society of Mackinac Island Old Goats is, and we'll get into your specific story.
Okay. So the Old Goats were established, those who have finished 25 Bayview Mackinac races. So it's a little bit different than Chicago. Chicago, if you started 25, that's fine. But in Port Huron side, you got to finish 25. So as time goes on, they were realizing that they were accumulating a lot of these guys that have started, way early in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and they're reaching these what we call milestones. So they came up with this association of 25 years you can be an old goat. Because at that time, you sail 25 races, you were an old goat, you were up in age a little bit, because generally speaking, guys didn't start sailing the Mackinac until they were a little bit later in life. Nowadays, kids start at 10 years old.
Right. A lot more families are involved.
Yeah.
So old goat, I understand the semantics of the word, but is there any story behind that term, old goat, from the society, or is it just one of those, as you're mentioning old folks, this is kind of the vernacular that you're using?
Yeah, just a goat, nothing in particular that has related to sailing at all with the goat, because
Right.
We don't take goats on the race.
Right. No, I was trying to, usually there's at least a connection to something, but I could not, other than maybe Vikings who put goats on, when they were doing the traveling across the Atlantic for food, I couldn't come up with it.
No, it doesn't really mean anything other than the term, you're an old goat,
Right. Right. Well, the other part is that this is a sport where you can compete for 50 years. That this is,
Right.
I don't think there's a sport around where you could be honored or recognized for being, for playing or doing or participating in an event this long.
Well,
So
that's true. That's true. And being that as you get older, the rule is that you move to the back of the boat the older you get.
right.
You become a tactician, you become a driver, a navigator of some sort. You're not up on the bow doing monkey stuff.
Right. I would probably have the job of coffee passer outer. I'm not sure if there's
That's
a title
fine
for
too.
that. Something.
Well, we need those too, because that's pretty important.
Right. There's no way I'm going to be rail meat for anybody, because if I got down under the lifeline, I'm not sure it would take a crane to get me back up.
That's all right.
You've got over 700 old goats, but the number of I really find this surprising, the number of Grand Rams.
Mm-hmm.
I think with your induction this year after the race is completed will be 32. Does that sound right?
30. I think there's 32 right now, so it'd be 33, I think. So if you think about it, Greg, if you think that, let's just, for easy math purposes, the race is 100 years old. And if you average, now in the beginning, there wasn't that many, but if you averaged 1,500 sailors per race, okay? Because if you got 150 to 200 boats, sometimes we've had 275 boats.
Right.
But if you averaged, you're looking at 1,500, 15,000 sailors or so, or whatever, and we have 33 Grand Rams, which is pretty small group,
Right.
pretty. I'm going to call it elite.
I would say it's pretty thin air. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. So Bobby Roadstrom was the very first Grand Ram. He was the first one to. No, actually, he wasn't. He was the first one to do the race. He only sailed 49, but Charlie Meier Sr. was the first one to get that status of 50.
Yeah, I certainly, congratulations. I think it's a remarkable achievement. I think the other part that you will be somewhat, I don't want to say rewarded, but certainly honored at the award ceremony on Mackinac Island.
Yeah.
As part of that, as part of that ritual, which I think is kind of nice that they honor those people. Just in the same vein, there's a thing called Old Forts, FORTS.
Right.
Not sure why they came up with Old Forts other than a fort on Mackinac, which I get. And that's for anybody who's worked on the race committee for 15 years, which I think is I also think is a terrific thing. In a day and age when, we're suffering on race crew, certainly.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice that they make that honor. Does Old Fort mean anything?
Just at the fort, you're holding down the fort, sort of.
Okay.
They like to have vernacular associated with the Mackinac Island,
right?
Because let's face it, the Mackinac race is a destination race,
right?
It's like sailing to Bermuda or the Caribbean or something. I think Mackinac Island is the Great Lakes Caribbean to me. It's a fun place, and it's quite unique because it's all these years, these guys get up there, they get to the Pink Pony, and they think they've been out to sea for 3 months.
Right.
they hoop it up pretty good. So the old
Right.
forts, to go back to the old forts, so that was designated as the race committee. Now, the race committee, at the time was primarily compiled of racers' wives and uncles and maybe retired racers that go up and run the race committee. They take the finishes and the times, and they start the boats and that. So very important group. Bayview Honor gives a race committee person of the year award every year in the springtime. I don't know who it was this year, but every year there's somebody who should be honored specifically. So it's
Tom, do
pretty.
you have any idea how many old forts there are that have been honored? Ballpark?
I think about 20.
Okay. Okay.
Is there
Is it in your experience with the race? Is there anybody in that group that's been sort of a stellar? If you mentioned race committee in Mackinac, is there a name that goes with that,
Well,
or a couple?
there are, back in the day, okay, and I'm dating myself a little bit. We had a guy by the name of Bill Wired, and Bill Wired his nickname was the Top Hat. I don't know if you know the story.
I don't.
So they built a tower in the Black River of Port Huron, and he wore a big black top hat, and he would announce on a loudspeaker the boats that entered the river and give a little bio of every boat. So he did that for probably 35 years or so. He was originally a sailor, probably back in the 30s, and then for whatever reason decided to do that. So he was top hat, and so that kind of stands out in historical ways. But there's been guys that have been race chairman, several times. Most race chairmen, once they get done with it, and they're like, I'm not doing this
Right.
again. It's a big event, because if you think about it, there's about 150 volunteers, and race chairman's job has evolved a little bit, due to technology and some other things. And, so you have subcommittees too. You got a starting line people, you got registration people, you got finish line people, scoring people, and all that. And, we used to manually score it. And thank God Louis Call, came up with the yacht scoring system, so we wouldn't have to look at the window of the pink pony to see who won, because it was all manually. If I may, I'd like to point out Louis a little bit. Okay.
Well, on the website, on the Bayview website, there's a picture of him.
Yeah.
And it says, "This one's for you,"
Right.
which I thought was so appropriate. And we had a chance to interview him last year about the wholesale yacht scoring program, and he was a gentleman, to say the least, and an unfortunate passing. So it was nice.
His contribution was monumental. Louis and I were best friends, and
All right.
oh yeah, I was a pallbearer at his funeral and gave a talk at his funeral a little bit, and so I was race chairman. And Louis and I were in New York at his family's condo in New York, and he's got this big piece of paper out on the table, and he's mapping this thing out. I didn't understand any of it. And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Well, I'm coming up with the scoring program." Whoa, how's this work? And all that. He showed it to me, and he says, "Okay, I got this. What do I do now?" I said, "Well, do you want to use it for the Mackinac race?" He said, "Oh, yeah. Would you do that?" I said, "Well, let's give it a try. But Louis, you got to be there in case the thing falls apart, crashes or whatever." So did it. And, the server wasn't big enough. So the server crashed, because all of a sudden everybody's looking at, yacht scoring. They didn't even know what it was. And so he says, "Okay," but he says, "I can't just do one race. What do I do?" I said, "Well, I think Chicago Yacht Club should be using this too." So I called up the chairman of the Chicago Yacht Club, and I said, "Hey, we got this guy Louis Call, and he come up with this thing." And he says, "Well, fine, we'll give it a try, but we don't have a Louis. Okay, you have a Louis. We don't have a Louis."
Right.
I said, "Well, let me talk to Louis, see what he would do." And I said, would you go there and run it for him? Because people were nervous at the time that you couldn't do it yourself. So the guy says, "Okay, so what does Louis want?" And I said, "Well, Louis wants his hotels paid for. He wants his transportation paid for, his food. Okay. and all that. And I said he wants all the rum and cokes he can drink. And the guy goes, I can afford everything except the rum and cokes. So that's how yacht scoring started. And
Right.
so Bayview Yacht Club's race, the race to Mackinac, you want to call it, was Louis's very first scoring program. And
Wow.
it was fantastic because you had to go find a TV that was broadcasting this.
Right.
And at the time, nobody understood it. This was like 2004,
Right.
2003, somewhere around there. And some people didn't even know what the internet was at that time,
Right.
But, they used to do it, write the scores on a loose leaf paper and tape them on the window of the Pink Pony. So you got off the boat and usually you sent the youngest kids, say, run up to the Pink Pony and see what's going on. Well, it took a couple hours,
Right.
to find out who won it. And, so that's how that all started. So I would say, probably Louis was most instrumental in the Mackinac race when it comes to that part of it.
Yeah. Did Yellow Brick, the tracking device, was that part of the development of the scoring? Was it an after part, or was Yellow Brick already there?
No, Yellow Brick came after.
I would think it'd have to be an addition to what Louis did.
It was Yellow Brick came along for a spectator,
right? So they can watch
to watch the race. And I remember the first few times people would call me up and say, well, it looks like somebody cut the corner at Cove Island, because it only pinged every 15 minutes.
Right.
So if it pinged right before the mark and then pinged after the mark, it looked like he cut the pie. So people were like, well, wait a minute, you were out in front and now he's not, now you're not, and so on. So I tell people that in the beginning, Yellow Brick was nothing more than a cartoon that you watched. You get sort of an idea of who's in front. Now, Yellow Brick has changed significantly, particularly for this race, because last year we used it for finishes. It would record it. So they increased the ping rate and now we're going to use it to use for virtual rounding for the Cove Island.
The Queen's Cup this year was a really cool race coming across Lake Michigan. And I literally found myself waking up at 3:00 in the morning to see what had happened between the race between Bob Hughes' Heartbreaker and Natalie J with Dr. O'Neill. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at the screen, and I would go watch a YouTube video and I would come back and I'd watch a YouTube video and come back to see who was going to finish first. Because at 3:00 in the morning, I wanted to know, but I'm actually watching this, like you said, this cartoon, and it's addictive. It's a little bit like watching, YouTube to some extent. You all of a sudden you find yourself watching a video with some guy whittling a duck, or, just exaggeration, but you get the point.
Right. Well, the racers use it too. Most racers can't get the internet out in the middle of the lake unless those boats that are using satellite communication, and not every boat has that because it's expensive to use a satellite phone and that. So we're quite interested. We're anxious when we come into sell so we can see where we are on the race as well. And that changes your strategy too. If you're in third place, you got to take a little gamble. Or if you're out in the lead, you be a little bit more, you cover your competition on the way into the island.
The race becomes it's not really a race. It becomes a lifestyle. It becomes part of what you do. You say 50 years on what you're doing. And I think I'm going to my 50th high school reunion this summer. And I can't imagine anything in my life that I've done any consistency of going all the way back to when Mr. Nixon was resigning from president. I mean, put it in the historical perspective, it's a pretty terrific honor. My question really quick is, you're going to be this year on Eagle One.
Yes.
And that was the runaway winner last year overall across the line first. They caught some Tim, and I never say his last name right.
LaRiviere.
Those guys caught some puffs early and got out ahead of everybody by, I'm guessing, 25, 30 miles, maybe?
Yeah, well, in the Chicago race we did, yes. And we had White Hawk, which is a 104-footer. We beat them by 33 miles across the line. So yeah, we got some good puffs, and but we had some light air. We just sailed a really, really good race. We sailed hard. The the 65-foot Eagle One is a cruising style boat. It's got a bathtub in it. Okay. So it's pretty heavy.
Right.
So we pushed it, we pushed it pretty hard. It was comfortable too, though.
When we interviewed Tim last year, he made mention of the fact that I think you guys got in at 3 or 4 in the morning. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
He mentioned that you got in early, and he says the guys at the dock had ever seen anybody that in the Chicago race. Nobody ever come across the line quite that quick. They weren't really exactly ready for you to come in. So.
Well, yeah, and to put it plainly, the cruising boat started Friday night.
Right.
So that made a difference too. But I sailed with Charlie Meier in Arctos, and I sailed with Charlie for 25 years, and this was a better boat for me, Eagle One. But I had a bet with them that we would cross the line before they do. Okay, and they started Saturday. Arctos is a very much faster boat, and they said no way. So we had a bottle of rum. So I made sure that rum was quite tasty.
Not that this is even anybody cares. How many side bets, like for you, how many side bets when you leave the line a week from Saturday, how many side bets do you have on a given race? More than a dozen?
Well, not personally, but I'd like to bet one of my best friends on another boat, that we're going to correct over you, or we're going to beat you, or some sort of thing like that. But when you get there, and we don't bet money. We bet a bottle of rum. We bet, whatever it might be, and we sit there and we drink it together. So it's all part of it. It's a Corinthian sport,
right?
And like you said, it's something that you can do your entire life. Now, for me and for a lot of guys my age and older, the rule of thumb is that the length of the boat should equal your age. Okay, so. Okay. If you're 60 years old, you better find a 60-foot boat to sail on. It's I'm 68 years old, and yeah, I'm 68 years old. So it's hard to find boats my size. But if you're 25 years old, a boat that's 25 or 30 feet is suitable for you, but it's not suitable for a 68-year-old.
Right. Well, I think the legacy part of the participation, there's a trophy behind me, which is the overall trophy that is given to the winners. You guys also get your names put on other cups in Bayview that'll be displayed for, in perpetuity as long as you're there. So I think the legacy part of honoring those who continue to do well, because there's nothing in the rules that says that you have to be first place to be a Grand Ram. It just says you got to get on the start line and finish.
You got to finish the race. Now every class winner, every crew member on that boat gets a gold medal, and that's presented at the awards party that's in October.
Yeah,
and collecting that gold medal is pretty important. I'm fortunate enough to have 14 of them.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, some guys have sailed the race, 40, 50 times, have never won it.
Yeah.
Some guys have won a lot more.
Right.
I mean, because the DeClerc boys, Bob and Al DeClerc. They got 25 each,
Right. I could race my boat, and unless I could put my engine on, I'd be dead last every race anyway. So it's all a relative discussion. I get that point.
One of the things that I've always did is I always sailed with friends. I've never sailed on a boat that I stepped on and I didn't know, and that's important to me because of the camaraderie. I think the physical challenges that we endure out there are part of the bonding thing, and the eating a meal together, and the whole experience is I'll only sail with friends, and I've had a much better time. It's all weather predicated. So there's been some really rough and tough races, and there's been some really slow races too that are just as miserable.
Yeah, flies and all kinds of stuff in the middle of the lake is probably more miserable than too much wind.
Yeah. Well, I'm primarily a driver. And sometimes the young guys say, "Can I have a turn at driving?" And I says, "When the wind is blowing 1 and the flies are out and it's raining, it's your turn to drive."
Yeah, You don't see a whole lot of boats coming across the line with Dodgers either. So it's all a relative discussion as to what you like, what you enjoy. So I get that.
Yeah. And I think I was a big proponent of allowing cruising boats to come and enter the race and be able to race fairly. We started the short course for that purpose. Okay. To have a little bit of an easier time of it. It's about 20 miles shorter or so. Everybody thinks it's a lot shorter, but it's only like 8 hours difference between the long course and the short course. So the cruising boats, they like to have a little challenge too. And maybe some of them take it pretty seriously and some of them take it pretty casually. But the important thing is that they all have to adhere to the safety rules and learn how to navigate that. Those are the important things.
Last question. The race this year, you finally get to be back at the island. You sort of, we haven't come full circle in the pandemic, but this is as close to previous races as there have been in the last 2 years anyway. Yeah. Is that a good thing for the race because it's a little easier to try to get everybody to the party?
Yeah, there's no question about it because, people that don't know anything about the Mackinac race, they say, well, can you shortly describe the race? And I said, it's a really crappy time between two great parties. Okay. So getting to the island, and a lot of people being my 50th, I got a lot of friends. I got 2 of my 4 kids are coming up to the island to help celebrate. And so, the Grand Ram, they get a big flag with the orange or the gold fringe around the edges of it. And it's quite an honor. And I'm so looking forward to it. I got to make sure that I stay healthy and don't fall down between now and July 16th. Because 2 years ago, I missed one of my 2 that I missed. I missed it 2 years ago because I hyper extended my knee and tore all my tendons off of my tibia. And I was in a brace. I couldn't walk for 4 months. So I had to skip the race,
Yeah.
So, but I told the guys on Eagle One, we just had a little meeting. I told the guys on Eagle One, I don't care if you cut your hand off, we're finishing the race because it's my 50th. So you got to finish to get the Grand Ram status.
Right. Well, listen, congratulations on the honor. I'm sure it'll be terrific on the island when they do all those awards, and hopefully we can catch up with you either on the island or maybe Friday night before the race starts. So appreciate your time.
You bet, Greg.
Briefly with Jay Austin, who is the U.S. Sailing's Area E, Bemis, and Smythe 420 and Laser Championships. If I got that right, that's a mouthful.
That's right.
Talk about today and exactly what happened.
So 2-day regatta. We hosted this regatta last year as well. Typically it rotates around from different clubs, but the kids had a ton of fun at our regatta last year. They actually, our area E rep asked me to host again this year. So we brought the kids back and it takes a village. I always say running regattas is all about, it's a village. And we had awesome volunteers, awesome race managers, awesome sailors. The parents were fantastic. So it was really two really, really good days of racing.
How many participants?
We had 17 420s and 9 lasers. So about close to 50 kids.
And at what club?
Sandusky Sailing Club in Sandusky,
Okay.
Ohio.
Okay. Which is a great place to sail if you haven't been the western part of Lake Erie, for sure. Anybody you want to give thanks to? This is a big event. So anybody you want to say thank you to?
Yeah, one of our big sponsors was actually Sailing Inc. They're out of Sandusky, Ryan Kyle out of Sandusky. And also Jake Thomas from Thomas Steel. Jake is a club member. He's a VX sailor, and he does a lot for our junior program. He actually volunteered to donate all of the awards for our kids, and they got some really nice gill backpacks and some pretty cool Sailing Inc. hats as well. So thanks to Jake and Ryan.
And obviously, certainly thank you to Sandusky Yacht Club.
Sandusky Sailing Club. Sandusky
Sailing Club.
Yep, two places, Sandusky Yacht Club and Sandusky Sailing Club. We have a really good relationship, but all the action happened at SSE.
We're talking with in the qualifiers for Smythe to go to Macataw. Am I correct?
Yes.
We're talking briefly with the Area E U.S. Sailing qualifiers for nationals at Makatawa. Emma, I'm going to let you say your last name first.
Friedauer.
And you won it today, and second place goes to
Mallory Deach.
Mallory. I appreciate you guys coming aboard. You guys obviously are pretty good at sailing lasers. Why lasers over other boats?
They're easier to lift.
All right, that's a practical question. I like that. Talk about the conditions today and talk a little bit about the race.
Today it started out a little bit lighter, and then the wind started to build throughout the day. We started with probably around 10 and ended with probably around 18, something like that. The races were good. We got, I believe, 5 off today. We did.
How close was the competition between the two of you?
It was close. We were like back and forth most of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many races?
5 today and 2 yesterday. So 7 total.
A good accumulative number. That's a good, that's a lot of races to determine champion.
Yeah.
Where do we fit into the national scheme when you go to Makatawa? Are we in the top third, middle third, lower third?
I'm not sure.
I don't know my competition yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's coming from the Midwest is definitely a challenge. When you're racing against people from like Florida and California and Rhode Island, I mean, they have these huge oceans right next to them, and it's super easy for them to race all year long. But from the Midwest, it's a little bit harder for us to get out on the water when like the lake freezes over.
I'd make an argument. There's a big lake right on the shore there, but then the problem is in January, it's a little difficult to sail a laser. So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
get that part of it. What's
Yeah.
the most difficult part for you guys sailing lasers?
I'm pretty short, so heavy winds and stuff. I really just struggle to keep the boat flat. And like other competitions, like some of my other competition are like a foot or more taller than me. So that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Real quick question. Where do you guys both sail out of?
I sail at a Hoover Sailing Club,
Which is where?
Columbus. It's in Westerville, Ohio.
Okay.
And I'm North Cape Yacht Club.
Okay. You mentioned that earlier. That's exactly right. Well, listen, congratulations. Hopefully we will get a chance to see you out at Makatawa. So best of luck and congratulations on obviously a great couple-day race.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're talking to the Area E U.S. Sailing Bemis winners, first and second place. They'll be headed to Makatawa Bay for nationals in Holland, Michigan, coming up, I think, guys, a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Do me a quick favor and introduce yourselves. We're going to start with Buck. You were in second place, and we'll just kind of go around the circle. Introduce yourselves, guys.
So my name is Buck Rathbun. I sail 420 and I sail out of the Cleveland Yacht Club.
Young lady?
I'm Reese Levinson. I sail 420 out of the Cleveland Yacht Club.
And the two brothers. We'll start with the skipper.
I'm Jacob Myers. I sail 420 and I sail out of Put-in Bay Yacht Club.
I'm Lloyd Myers and I sail 420 out of Put-in Bay Yacht Club.
All right, well, let's start with congratulations. That's the first thing. Second thing,
Thank you.
you had races 2 days. How close was the race between you two guys?
It was pretty close. I mean, we ended a couple points apart.
Yeah, just a few points.
What was it? Talk a little bit about the race.
So, I mean, we had the first day we had a ton of wind. It was just really windy out there. And then today it died down a bit, but we still have pretty strong, consistent breeze all day.
Okay. Thoughts? Skippers?
Yeah, I mean, it was really the two of us battling for first place.
Mr. Myers, what are you good at on the 420?
I think I'm good at I'm like pointing high.
Okay. Now you both got crew members. Talk briefly about what it's like to have another crew member on the 420. Weight is part of that discussion. How much time you spend in the boat? And in one case, you got a female and a male. In the other case, you got brother and brother. So it's kind of a unique situation. And obviously, we're both very successful with it. So talk about what it's like to have these guys for skippers.
Sometimes we get into arguments, but it's fine. But we don't weigh much, so it's tough to keep the boat flat.
I've made a joke a couple times on the show that I'd be a one-man crew because my weight is equal to both, well, probably all four of you guys. A young lady sailing with guys. I don't see that as even an issue anymore. Do you? Is that a fair statement?
No, I think if in any ways it's like better, less fighting going on.
Okay. What do you got to do well on the 420 to be successful?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty small boat, right? So, I mean, moving your body weight's important, like kind steering with your body, because it's a very physical boat to sail, right? And I think that having a good control on your movements and your maneuvers is very important, especially in this boat.
Mr. Myers?
Yeah.
Good. That's a great answer. I appreciate that. You're kind of quiet. Yes, Mr. Myers, you're kind of quiet. Are you quiet on the water?
No.
Not really.
Okay. No, that's fine. This is not a big deal. So let me ask the obvious question. You obviously have earned a chance to go to Makatawa to compete against the other winners from other areas. Where do we? I asked this of the Lasers. Where do we stack up, either regionally, Midwest, or nationally? And how do you guys think you're going to fare when you get to Holland, Michigan?
Well, I mean, we don't really have that much experience sailing with like the people from all over the US, right? So we've generally been sailing within our region, like the area east. So I don't really know yet how good the other sailors are from the other areas.
Let me ask a better question then. You think you have a chance to compete, or do you think you're going to get your butts kicked?
Well, I mean, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna go in there wanting to win it, right? Like we have just as much of a chance as anybody else does.
For you guys, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's going to be a lot harder because I know people from other areas have a chance to sail year round when we don't have that opportunity here because the lake freezes.
It does that in the wintertime, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does sometimes.
Why sailing for all four of you? And we'll start with Buck. Why the sport of sailing? What is it about it that makes you keep coming back and competing, and why racing?
Well, I think that like the whole community behind sailing is it's just it makes it such a fun sport, right? Like we all compete with each other, but we're all really good friends. Like all four of us actually compete on the same high school team, and so I think it's just a really fun sport, but B, the people in the community behind it make it a lot of fun.
Mr. Myers?
Yeah, it's like a lot about like the people, but also just going out there sailing, for me at least, is the most fun part. Just going out there.
Guys in the back?
It's fun. I like talking to the people on the boats. It's I like being on the water, and it's really relaxing.
Okay. What excites you, young lady?
I love being on the water, and I've met so many people over the years from sailing, and I just love the 420 boat too.
As skippers, are they communicative with you guys as crew members? Does it work pretty well on the water most of the time?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're always working on more communication, right? Because the more the better. But yeah, I think we do a pretty good job of that.
And the follow-up question I would have is, do you get into snips with each other, and is there fighting, or is it the skipper's the guy and that's the end of it?
No.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, like we obviously have disagreements sometimes about tactics or what side of the line we should start on and whatnot. But we usually, we both trust each other, and we both pretty figure it out.
Okay. Well, listen, guys, congratulations, and best of luck when you get to Makatawa. I want to thank everybody who was aboard this week, and all those championship sailors down in Sandusky Sailing Club who put on a race down on the west end of Lake Erie. We appreciate your time, and they'll be in Makatawa Bay in a couple of weeks for the National. So we wish them the best of luck representing our area. And again, we represent Area E. We'd like to think of it as maybe 1, 2, or 3, but hey, it works. So best of luck with that. And we wanted to talk to Tom. And then stay tuned for the next few weeks, because we've got some really good shows coming up with some really interesting guests covering the MAC races, both from Chicago and Port Huron. So until next time, we appreciate everybody in back. Thanks for watching.
you.